Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everybody. There's something that we all have in common, many things, but this one in particular, and it's one of those things that many times we don't talk about, but it's dealing with grief, dealing with loss in our lives. And the first thing that comes to mind is the loss of somebody close to you, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only thing that you may grieve in life. You could be grieving the loss of a relationship, a job, so many other things. How do you deal with that? Found somebody that can walk that journey with you, or maybe you're supporting somebody else who is going through a grieving process. And we're going to talk to him today. He's your coach and your support. Cam Taylor joins us on the program today. Hey, Cam, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here because it's so important. I don't know many people that offer what you offer. And I understand that when there is a loss, that there is a process typically that somebody goes through. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say there are lots of unclear answers to that question. There's the linear answer, which I find most unhelpful, which often people think of the 5 stages of grief.
Yes.
You have to go through. And I can speak more to that later, but I find that grief is such a unique experience for everybody. And as you say, there's so many different kinds of losses, and I'd say there's different degrees and levels of grief. And you need to be able to understand what your grief is, and then how should you approach it? What's the best way for you to handle your grief?
What are some, and I identified a few of those things in terms of grief, but maybe some of us aren't realizing that there was a loss in our lives. Are there some other things that maybe I didn't hit upon?
Yeah, I've thought about this. I've written about this as well. This idea that there are 5 faces to loss. And I know there's many more to that, many other faces, but it isn't just the loss of a loved one. That is one face for sure. But for example, let me give you a few more of them. There's loss of safety. You know, I think of the fires that have just happened recently, and they seem to be happening all over the world. There's people have experienced a loss of feeling safe in their own homes, never mind the loss of actual homes and the things that have grown dear to them. There's loss of autonomy. Think of someone that is aging, and first of all, they can no longer drive, and then they're maybe taken out of their home and they're put into a care home of some kind. There's so much grief that needs to be processed. I think of my father, who at 88 was moving from his home to the home where he lived, and he had to give up his whole shop and his yard, and he was grieving and didn't even realize it. So there's just a few of the losses that really need grief to come along behind it and to go with those losses.
Wow, you brought back a thought that I'll call it a memory in the last couple of months. I know somebody who knows somebody. This individual is very well off, lives in New York City, penthouse overlooking Central Park, just beautiful, did very well for himself, decided to retire. And my friend walked into his place and found him balled up in the corner, crying and despondent, because he didn't know what retirement meant, and not his life changing. I guess that was his identity, his work, and he didn't know how to process it. So I see what you're saying here.
Yeah, that's another one, loss of identity. And that happens when there's a loss of a loved one, for sure. I've gone through that myself. But people that retire, people that lose their jobs, they don't know who they are, especially if who they are is attached to what they do.
Yeah.
So that person needs support. They need to be able to process and grieve and experience the emotion that comes with that, and realize that that's okay. And you're being normal right now. You're not being crazy.
Let's look at, and by the way, we're going to get to your book and how you can support people that are going through this. But let's assume that somebody just suffered a loss, whatever it might be. It's a loss of someone, a job, a relationship, something that's very impactful. What are some of the first things that they should be doing? Or maybe this is for somebody else that wants to help someone.
Yeah, and I can speak to that really on both sides of it, because there's a lot of commonalities. So when someone experiences a loss, loss of a loved one, loss of a job, any kind of traumatic, doesn't even need to be super traumatic. It just is any kind of loss. I think the first thing that people need, and I see this all the time, is I lead grief groups and I see people showing up. What do these people need? They feel all alone. And one of the things that they need, which I think is huge, is they need their grief validated. They need someone to say, or say it to yourself, look in the mirror and say, this is okay that I'm feeling this way. Because a lot of times people feel like I shouldn't feel this way, or I should get over this faster, but especially in those early stages or phases of a loss, you need to know that it's okay to be exactly where you are on that journey, especially emotionally. And there's all kinds of even physical reactions in your body that hit you. And you need to know that A, it's okay, and B, you're not the only one that has that. And I hear people say this all the time. I am so grateful that there are others that are actually feeling the same way that I do. For example, I talk about in my book, and this is part of my story, that my wife passed away in 2020 from kidney cancer. It was a fairly quick time when she got diagnosed to when she actually passed away. And I was just devastated. I was beside myself, lost. And I remember one night I was laying on the bed and it felt like I was having a heart attack. And now I'm in good shape. I was a marathon runner, a cyclist. I mean, I was in shape. Why am I having a heart attack? Well, I find out later that that's actually normal. That's one of the symptoms that happens to some people when they are grieving, when there's a hole in your heart. You know, they talk about the broken heart. So those are the two things. And I think for the person that is supporting the grieving person, I'll just say, your job is not to minimize, not to come with pat answers or those cliches that everybody hates, but to validate it and just to be with people. And not to say, I understand, because nobody can understand exactly what you've gone through. So that's a phrase to eliminate from your vocabulary.
I know how you
You
feel.
can't say things like,
Yeah.
exactly, I know how you feel, exactly. But you can say, I'm so sorry for your loss. That one does get used a lot. But you can say other variations of that. I just feel so deeply what you've experienced, and I want to be here with you. So those are a couple ideas that I think people need on the front end of a loss and what grief
Oh,
can look like, needs to look like.
thank you for sharing. And it's maybe so obvious, but until you just said it, I think many people don't realize it. To let somebody know, I'm here for you. You never hear that. I think we're afraid to say it. I don't know. Even when somebody suffers a loss and it's a friend on Facebook or a connection on Facebook, and you want to send some caring vibration to them, just let them know. But yeah, a lot of times, sorry for your loss, and that's okay. At least you're making the attempt. I always try to think even deeper than that. What I try to get in their head. If it's somebody closer, I'm here if you need somebody to talk to anytime, reach out. That I think speaks volumes, and knowing that, like you in that moment that felt like you were having a heart attack. What do I do? Who do I reach out to? Who? We don't have that answer at that time, right?
Exactly. And I think sometimes it can be as simple as a text to somebody that you have a relationship with. I think this is just as tricky. If that person that's had the loss doesn't really know you, that can be awkward.
Yeah.
Because why all of a sudden are you approaching them? And I think we have to be careful there that we think now we're going to swoop in and be the rescuer
Right.
and be this great support for this person. No, you have to be careful. If it's a person you have high trust with, then you may think, oh, I don't want to bother them. But what they need is someone to actually care. And sometimes we don't know what to say, so we say nothing. Well, say something.
Yeah.
Say, I'm here for you. I just had a friend lose his son at a young age in his 30s. And this friend of mine, we have a strong relationship, very trusting, a lot of trust. And so I've been reaching out to him on a regular basis. He's not quite ready for that coffee or for that lunch yet, but I know that he needs me to care and to notice that he's there and not just be absent. And that's oftentimes what people do because it's awkward. And the person grieving needs those little touch points. Someone just saying that you care. And they'll often say, well, offer to take them something or give them something. And I say, be as specific as you can. Don't just say, if you ever need anything, let me know. A grieving person doesn't always know what they need. So say something like, do you want $100 gift card for this restaurant or that delivery service? So then you're giving them those options. You're making it easy for them to say, yes, and here's how you can help me.
Love that advice. Even something as simple as, I want to have dinner delivered. Whatever you guys want, let me know. Yeah. Wow. Let's say you're at that point where you went through a loss, but you're having a challenge rebuilding your life. And that could even be a job. That could be a loved one. Doesn't matter. How do you find purpose in your life? Get back on track to some extent? Are there some ways that you can offer?
There's a lot of things that come to mind. One thing that I've thought through is I've created my own little grief kind of process. It's not linear, but it is these 4 pieces to a healthy grief journey. I call it the good grief journey, not good grief Charlie Brown, but good as in thorough, as in deep grief, and deep healing eventually. So the G is go down into your grief. The O is open up to new ideas and people. So let me stop right there. That to me is partly what a person needs. They don't know what they don't know about grief. That's why I'm such a believer in education, in helping people grasp ideas that they've never thought of, that actually give them handles to hold on to as they walk through their grief. But for example, I've leaned on the Stoics for some of their wisdom, and they have a lot of wisdom as it relates to death and dying and what can I control and all these things. And there's just a lot of wisdom in places like that. And these ideas I give to a person who feels like this is so unfair. Well, the idea is life is unfair. We cannot get off this planet without running into loss, transition, adversity, storms, fires, floods, disappointments. That is actually what life serves up. We cannot control that. All we can control is our reaction to that, how we respond to that. I mean, that's just one idea of so many ideas that are so important. And another one is, open yourself up to people and the right ideas, is realizing that if you just stick to yourself and keep your grief all bottled up inside, you will not grieve well. You will not heal. You need empathetic friends. I say empathetic witnesses who will be there to hear your story. Something happens actually in your brain, it's proven, and in your body when you speak out loud the story that's gurgling up inside of you, that's locked up inside. And there, right there, ideas and people, the interplay of those two things really help that grieving person take those baby steps to find that purpose, to find a new identity, to normalize what they're going through. And it is a tedious journey many times, but it's the journey that you have to go on if you want to get to the D in good, which is discover how to live again after loss.
I truly appreciate, Cam, the way you present things, because you are a realist. Like you just said, that in a word, I'm gonna go there. Like life can suck. It's the truth. Life is gonna deal you some things. So you have to be real about it. And that's what I'm getting from you. And it's you're not sugarcoating anything, but also you're offering immense support to help people move forward.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think, you speak of purpose. Purpose, I think, is discovered a little later on in the journey, after you've really worked through so much of that emotion and the fog brain and all the things that are going on. Purpose to me is starting to wake up in the morning and to be able to realize, okay, this is what I can do with what I've experienced. And that's what happened to me when my wife died in May, and I grieved. And in some respect, grief never leaves you. I think it changes in size and dimension. But later on that year, I was having a coffee and I was journaling, which is one of my practices, which really helped me to grieve.
Mm.
And I had this epiphany. It's like a light bulb went on in my head. Wherever these light bulbs are placed in your body, this one I think was in my head, I'm not sure. And it was this insight, or not command, but this direction that you can actually be a grief mentor. And I didn't really do much with it right then because it was only 6 months after my wife died. But what I realized was that, you know what? This has not happened for no reason at all. Now, cancer is awful, and I don't wish that on anybody, and it's a part of this broken planet that we live on. But what I was coming to realize was, you now have such deep empathy for those that have had loss of all kinds, that I want you to take that. And you're also a writer and an educator and a teacher and a coach. I want you to take that, wherever that voice was coming from, and start to help others who really don't have that support. So that purpose for me is what I'm doing today. I am sharing, I'm supporting, I'm encouraging people that may not have a place to go, maybe haven't found the support they need to travel well through the grief that they're experiencing, or to know how to help the person that's grieving and they don't know where to turn.
Empathy. You said that word, and I detect it in you in a big way. And I'll be honest with you, I'm the one that always says to people, you're empathetic. I know it. You are. Until in the past 6 months, I took a strength assessment test, and my number one strength was communication. Okay, this is what I do. Number two is empathy. I had no idea. I thought it was that. Maybe, out of 34 strengths, maybe 15, something like that. And now things are coming clear in my mind. I met somebody a few years ago who suddenly lost their husband, and she couldn't even walk into a restaurant. She couldn't do anything. And I just felt like I needed to walk that journey with her. Got her some hypnotherapy, got her to the point where she was going to concerts again, living life again. I don't know what it was, but I needed to be there for her. And I'm happy I was there, and I try to be there, still to the day. But we need to realize those things in others when this happens, that they need somebody to walk the journey,
Yeah, that's true. The fancy word that I've learned, and I've learned it from a grief specialist, Alan Wolfelt, talks about companioning. He's taken the word companion and put an ing on the end to make it something that's active. And the more that I've come to realize what companioning is, the more powerful it really is. Companion, the word itself, has something to do with eating bread with somebody else, to be in their company, to be alongside of them. And companioning is taking yourself out of the driver's seat and letting the person who's grieving actually drive that car, drive their life in front of you or beside you, and you're going with them on that journey.
Love
and
it.
I found that to be and that's what sounds like what you've been doing, is you've been companioning this lady, just being there with her. And sometimes all you have to do is show up.
Yeah.
And don't feel like you have to have answers or solutions or say all the right words. Sometimes just having somebody there, having that presence, someone with care, a compassionate heart, just makes all the difference.
Got a couple of minutes left. Want to get to your book. Based on what you just said, one quick question. How do you get past feeling uncomfortable when that person wants to talk about the person, let's say that they lost somebody? How do you just feel comfortable and not walk on eggshells where you're afraid to go in a certain spot to say something that you think might upset them?
think if you are feeling uncomfortable, now it wouldn't be the time to do this, but I would wonder, what are you not fully aware of in your own life? I think sometimes the people that are the least empathetic have the least understanding or experience with loss and pain and suffering. Now, you can't do that when all of a sudden somebody is saying, I just lost so and so, or my daughter just died of an overdose, or whatever they're saying.
Right.
But I think, regardless of how you're feeling, to be able to come at that person and just show up and kind of dismiss this idea that, oh, I have to say the right thing. No, you don't have to actually say the right thing. Now, don't say the wrong thing or stupid things. Don't say I understand, and kind of know a few things that maybe you shouldn't say. But I think you have to somehow stop yourself from getting in your own head and actually minimizing or deflecting that person's grief because you're uncomfortable with it.
Right.
That's not a very good answer, but I think I'd say for sure that person might just want to reflect on their own life. Maybe there's some grief they haven't grieved. And maybe they just need to kind of pause and say, you know what? If I was in their shoes, I would want someone to do this. Just be present. So there's a few ideas.
Maybe it even comes down to listening very carefully, because they'll, like you said, you put them in the driver's seat, they're driving. So if you listen to the direction that they're going in, you can ride along with them and not have to worry so much about, stepping on eggshells and don't want to open up a wound and all of that. Tell us about you have one book or two?
I do have two books. My other book really does deal with my first book, which is called Detour. That's a motorcycle accident that I had. And it's a different type of loss.
Wow.
But the book that I just published this summer is on grief of a loved one, which can actually apply to all losses, as we've said. But this one is my most recent one, Unlocking the Mystery of Grief. And the subtitle is How to Grieve Well and Learn to Live Again After Loss. And the title already came to me because I realized I felt like grief was a mystery. So the more that I learned, I realized, I bet you there's other people that feel the same way. But they just need some guidance. They need someone to come alongside them that's been on their journey, that can at least give them some of these ideas and be that support, that mentor, that coach that can help them on their way.
Amazing. Amazon, I'm sure the books are available there, right?
Sure, for sure, yeah.
And and one thing we didn't mention, we'll get to this next time we get together, that you also coach on this. You work with groups, you work with many individuals, even at one time, helping them help others. How do we start this process of having somebody in their corner that's gone through this? How do we find you?
Well, I think if you go to my website, that's the best place where you can find me and find out more. So it's goodgriefjourney.com. So that's goodgriefjourney.com. And I've got a few different ways that I help people. I have resources. I've got a free section of my book for those that are grieving or anybody that wants to learn more. I've also got an opportunity to take a free 7-day email course called Companioning. And that's especially for the person that wants to learn. Tell me more about companioning. That will be a great asset. You can just grab that on my website. And then you can also, let's get a conversation going. If you want me to help facilitate some training, maybe a workshop with a group of people that you know of, I would love to do that. I train grief group facilitators. I train people on grief as a group. I train people to be better companions. So I have a range of ways that I do that online, and I'd love to chat with you. And that maybe would be just start with a conversation, and I would look forward to that.
Sure. I look forward next time we get together. Cam, thank you so much for today. Thank you for the insight. And literally, it's a cliche, doing what you do. It's the only way I can say it. And there's not a lot of people out there that have somewhere to turn to walk this journey. And companioning, what a great term, because the word companion, sometimes it can get uncomfortable. You're somebody's companion. Yeah, in a way, I guess you are when you're walking that journey, but companioning is maybe the verb of
Exactly.
that. Fantastic. Thank you so much, and looking forward next time we get together.
Well, thank you as well, and you have a great day.
You too. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.